It all comes down to today, doesn't it?
Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister, has delivered her maiden budget.
That's Nirmala Sitharaman's first budget, and it packs quite a punch.
What is your single biggest risk that you foresee for the economy today?
To believe in itself and start moving.
Well, let me start the show by thanking you, the viewer. CNBC-TV18 has emerged as the most watched television news channel on Budget Day. We were India's #1 choice with almost 60% viewership on Budget Day. And not just that, CNBC-TV18 has beaten competition in the Budget Week as well with a 60% viewership. And when the Finance Minister spoke after the budget to CNBC-TV18, in that exclusive interview, we had more than 98% viewership. Well, over the last 19 years, CNBC-TV18 has been your budget destination. The biggest voices on the market, the economy, top policy makers, here on one channel. Not only the most watched business channel, CNBC-TV18 is also the most watched English news channel. So once again, we want to thank you, the viewer, for the trust and the continued support. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on CNBC-TV18. Let's start with the market action of the day. Strong global cues helping the bulls make a comeback on Dalal Street. The Nifty snapped its 4-day losing streak, ending over 0.5% higher. The Nifty and the Sensex posted their best one-day gain in the last 8 trading sessions. So perhaps oversold, the market's recovering a tad. Broader markets also rose in line with the benchmarks as the Nifty Bank snapped its 3-day losing streak. And all of this thanks to hopes that the US Federal Reserve could cut interest rates. So it is the global rally that filtered down to our markets as well. And you saw green across all indices today. Well, the bulls are getting a bit of a breather, but sentiment is far from upbeat. Auto sales continue to be in the slow lane. Consumer goods are struggling for traction, and this does not bode well for a potential economic recovery. Now, 3 big newsmakers today were candid about the current situation, even as they remain hopeful that a recovery could be around the corner. Pawan Goenka of Mahindra & Mahindra said April to June quarter was the worst for passenger vehicles in nearly 2 decades. Axis Bank's Amitabh Chaudhry also said that a slowdown in auto and consumption is dragging the economy. And Baba Kalyani of Bharat Forge, while signing a 700 crore rupee defense order, was worried about his bread and butter auto business. So let's start with Pawan Goenka. Now, after a 15% contraction in growth during the first quarter, Goenka says the company could slash its full-year growth projection. But he does remain hopeful that the upcoming festive season could act as a trigger to boost consumption. A sentiment that was also echoed by the president of industry body SIAM, Rajan Vadhera. Let's take a look.
This is perhaps the worst quarter for passenger vehicles since 2001. That means in 18 years we haven't had this kind of drop. And the closest that we came was, I think, 3rd quarter of F09, just before the slowdown that happened. And then we did recover very quickly. And that's kind of what I'm counting on, that if we do all the right things, India has the resilience, the industry has the resilience to recover very quickly from a very sharp drop that has happened. And we have proven it 2-3 times in the history. It's a vicious cycle that we have fallen in, and we need to create a virtuous cycle by giving a bit of a kick for demand for a short term. And therefore something has to be done. And I guess one of the disappointments that the industry had was that while the budget was very good for electric vehicles, while the budget was very good for long-term vision for the government, but for the short-term stimuli that we needed for the next 3 months, 4 months, till the festive season is over, was missing.
Do you fear that demand could fall further over the next 6 to 12 months, purely because we have this BS6 transition that will take place, where there is a cost inflation angle as well? I mean, people are talking about almost a 15% cost inflation too. Is that a reasonable assumption, and do you fear that demand could fall further because of that? With
BS6 prices going up, and the GST also goes up, and maybe Government of India can find some way of not increasing GST for the cost increase of BS6. That means the BS6 cost becomes GST free, and that will obviously help to reduce the the impact of GST cost increase on the consumer and somewhat dampen the negative sentiment.
What kind of capacity utilization are you at now? Is there any day-wise shutdown or line-wise shutdown at M&M?
Last month we had, I think, 4 to 5 days of shutdown, which means on a 25 days working, we are about 20% shutdown. And the month of July is looking better. I don't know right now whether we will have a shutdown or not, but even if we did, it will not be 5 or 6 days. It will be somewhat lower. We do expect that July will not be as bad, but we may still have a couple of days of shutdown in July. August, September, with the festive season coming in, clearly we are hoping that the plants will run full capacity.
The industry is not staring at layoffs, is it?
Clearly, in case of permanent employees, there is no question of layoff because and contractually they are permanently employed by the company, and no matter what happens, there is no layoffs that happen. What certainly is true is the demand pull right now, and maybe it will improve in August, September, is not something which will lead to a lot of new employment.
SIAM has penciled in a very conservative volume growth estimate of just 3 to 5% for FY20. What would your own estimates be?
So let me tackle tractor first. See, tractor we had said 5% at the beginning of the year, and we have seen a degrowth of 15% in the first quarter. In our internal estimate, the first quarter was supposed to be small degrowth, maybe 5% degrowth, but not 15%. And therefore, looking at the next 9 months, the 5% growth will require 10% growth for next 9 months to get 5% for the whole year. And 10% appears very unlikely. And therefore, we would have to slightly downward revise our estimate. But I'm going to wait till the end of July to see how monsoon pans out. Right now on auto, I'm not thinking about a reduction in our industry growth estimate. And again, it will depend on what happens in July, August. Right now, we're a little bit more hopeful about monsoon than we were at the beginning of the monsoon because the last 2 weeks have been pretty good. And if that continues and we get a near normal monsoon, I think that will bode very well both for auto as well as tractor industry.
July typically is not a very good month because of the monsoons and slowing down of various activities. July is till today not looking any better than June. So we are hopeful that September, due to festive season, should bounce back. With the inventory now under control, and hopefully the month of July also will lead to balancing of the inventories, I think the situation is only going to improve from here as far as the dealers are concerned.
Well, so the slowdown in Motown continues, and now all hope being pinned on the festive season. But at this point in time, growth is elusive. It's not just auto companies. Banks are equally worried about the slowdown in consumption. Axis Bank's Amitabh Chaudhry is cautious about the bank's growth outlook and the sectors that they lend to. Chaudhry said that some industries are showing signs of stress, and even though Axis Bank has shareholder approval to raise capital, he said that they will make the move only when the time is right. Take a look.
Generally, if you see the trend in the market, I think some parameters of the economy are definitely slowing down. I think the numbers for car sales came out yesterday, and they show a real slowdown. You are seeing a slowdown on the consumer goods side also. The credit growth is also a bit tepid. And you're also seeing some stress developing in the, generally across sectors. So you have to be careful about just being out there and giving credit out. We'll talk about the growth when we have the opportunity to talk about it. But yes, I think I'll only say that we have to be cautious about how do we look at growth going forward.
So, but when you're being conservative about growth and talking about a slowdown, what is the need to raise capital? I mean, how much lending are you going to be?
We have not said we are raising capital. The only thing we have said is that we are taking an enabling resolution to look at raising capital when the right opportunity arises.
Are you looking to buy any NBFC pooled portfolios, and what do you make of the overall liquidity scenario?
So we have been buying NBFC's portfolios for the longest period of time. It's not something new which we're going to start because budget has talked about it. We will continue to evaluate if the right pools are available, and if it comes at the right price to us with the right kind of credit risk, we will look at buying. But that we've been doing in the past also. We don't anticipate that we are going to suddenly increase the pace at which we are buying these pools. As I said, we have to be careful given some of the trends which are emerging in the economy, and we will obviously, if the right opportunity comes along, definitely go after it. As far as the budget is concerned, I think it has given some clear signals in terms of what the government expects to see on the NBFC side. We are hoping that it can lead to some of the demand coming back. I think the finance minister has very clearly painted a vision and has backed that vision with some measures. Some measures will be rolled out over a period of time.
So my last question on the SR Steel verdict, are you a little upset about what has come out? Lenders are obviously going to challenge this, but what sort of precedent does it set, and are you going to be a little hesitant using IBC going forward?
Well, I mean, obviously the banks are talking about going to the Supreme Court and requesting them to relook at the judgment. It was a bit unexpected. So let's wait for the Supreme Court judgment before we start jumping to conclusions on whether IBC makes sense or does not make sense.
Well, that's the Axis Bank CEO also worried about the slowdown in consumption. Now, up next, Baba Kalyani on his defense bet and why he needs to focus more on the bread and butter auto business. That and more when we get back.